Has this ever happened to you? You're browsing YouTube and you see one of your favorite YouTubers post an unpaid review of a new product, maybe a telescope. You see something like this.
Hi, I'm the best astro YouTuber. I just received this doublet from Awesome Telescopes to review. I was not paid to do this review. Let me tell you what, it's awesome.
You trust the YouTuber and decide you'll save up some money and buy it. A few weeks or months later, depending on your budget, you see another one of your favorite YouTubers. They review the same telescope, which they bought with their own money.
Welcome back to my channel, the coolest cosmic YouTuber. I just bought the doublet refractor from Awesome Telescopes after seeing other reviews on YouTube. There are some things I like about it, but there are definitely things I don't like. In this video, I'll go over the reasons why I wouldn't recommend it.
You're now confused. Not only are all your favorite YouTubers stick people, but maybe you've already bought the telescope and wonder if you made a mistake. Let's dive into things to see what is going on. Welcome to Deep Sky Detail. Okay, so this video is all about unpaid reviews on YouTube and whether they are a scam. To begin, let's define some things. Maybe a bit too simply, but I think it is useful to understand the video. I think reviews on YouTube fall under three categories: sponsored reviews, unpaid reviews, and YouTuber-funded reviews. The first is pretty obvious. A sponsored review is where a company pays a YouTuber to review their product. Most of us know about the pitfalls of these reviews. The second, and the focus of this video, is unpaid review. Unpaid reviews happen when a company reaches out to a YouTuber and asks them to review their product for free. They'll send the product to the YouTuber, and the YouTuber puts in their own time and energy to review it. With public confidence in organizations at historic lows, it makes sense for companies to market their products through so-called influencers, like YouTubers. They put a human face on a company's product and are seen as not associated with the company. The third type of review happens when a YouTuber purchases the product with their own money. They then post a review about it without anyone asking them to. The second type, or unpaid reviews, are, in my opinion, in a morally gray area. I think they can be very useful and consumers can learn a lot from them. However, there are pitfalls that can make them less than ideal. I'm going to be going over three of these pitfalls and what you can do to protect yourself as a consumer from making a bad decision. Let me tell you a story. It's a story about a can of Coca-Cola. It's the 1970s and a social psychologist named Regan wanted to understand how favors affect people. He had volunteers come in to do an experiment. When someone walked into the lab to do the experiment, the phone would ring. A lab assistant picked up the phone. Half the time, the lab assistant acted unpleasantly to the caller, saying things like, "Look, I don't work here, lady, just call later," and then would hang up rudely. The other half of the time, the lab assistant would be nice to the caller and apologize for not knowing where the secretary is. After all, this was just an act. The volunteers thought that they were just waiting to start the experiment. As the participant volunteers were waiting to start, the lab assistant would leave for a few minutes, then come back. Half the time, they had 2 cans of Coke. They said something like, "Hey, I bought a Coke. I bought one for you too." The other half of the time, they came back with nothing and did not give a Coke to the participant who was patiently waiting for the experiment to start. Then the lab assistant would ask the participant to buy some raffle tickets. They'd say, "Would you do me a favor? I'm selling raffle tickets from my high school back home to build a new gym. The tickets cost 25 cents each and the price is a new Corvette. The thing is, if I sell the most tickets, I get $50 and I could use it." The participant would then be able to buy the raffle tickets, and with that, the experiment was over, all while the participant thought it hadn't even started. So what happened? What was this all about? Well, Dr. Regan wanted to know if the initial favor, the can of Coca-Cola, made participants more likely to buy raffle tickets. If the lab assistant was polite to the caller and brought the participants a Coke, on average, the participants bought about 2 raffle tickets. If they didn't get a Coke, they bought 1 ticket on average. If the lab assistant was rude to the caller and brought the participant a Coke, the participants bought 1.5 raffle tickets on average. If they didn't get a Coke, the participants bought 0.8 raffle tickets on average. Keep in mind, raffle tickets cost 25 cents. In the 1970s, a can of Coke cost only around 5 to 10 cents. By giving a favor, you can get an even bigger favor from someone else. This is especially true when you cannot split a favor into parts. For example, you cannot split a raffle ticket into half a raffle ticket. It just doesn't work like that. So the question is, what is the raffle ticket when we compare it to unpaid reviews? And what is a can of Coke? Well, the raffle ticket is how favorable an unpaid review is. That's easy. But what is the proverbial can of Coke? Well, let's look at an email that was sent to me by a company to review their product. I've blurred the names, but in this email, you can see that I would receive the product for free. So sometimes YouTubers receive the product that they test. But this is not always the case. There are other things YouTubers do receive though. Imagine that you are a YouTuber for a moment. A company emails you offering to review their product. Why might you say yes? Well, first and foremost, you get an idea for a video. You're always looking for new ideas. Also, there is a bit of perceived prestige that comes from being asked to do a review. You might be one of the first people to use a new product, for example. There's a sense of pride that someone, somewhere, thinks your videos are good enough to have their product associated with. These things are like cans of Coca-Cola in Dr. Regan's experiment. Most likely, they'll affect the number of raffle tickets the YouTuber will buy. Okay, let me tell you another story. It's about people being happier with $1 than people being happier with $20. For this story, you'll be the main character. You've been recruited to take part in a science experiment. You walk in, and a researcher greets you. The researcher says that the experiment will last an hour, but you've signed up for 2 hours. Because of that, there will be a brief survey at the end where you'll rate the experiment. You're fine with that. You then start the experiment, and let me tell you what, it is amazing. For 30 minutes, you have to put square pegs in square holes. You then take out the square pegs, turn them 90 degrees, and put them back into the holes. The experimenter times you and takes notes as you work. You've probably never had such fun in your life for 30 minutes. Well, when you're finished, the experimenter gets up, leaves the room for a couple of minutes, and comes back. She's kind of nervous and awkwardly starts to speak. You know, she says, we're doing this experiment in a couple ways. Some people do it without any preconceived ideas, like you, but others are told it's a great experiment before they go into it by a paid lab assistant. The lab assistant pretends they've just done the task, and they tell the next participant how great it is. The thing is, and the experimenter looks down, our lab assistant is sick today. Would you mind doing it? We can pay you $220. After that, you'll take a brief survey about the experiment. $220? $220? You could use it to help buy a new telescope. You're in. So you basically go into the waiting room and strike up a conversation with the next participant. You're supposed to say, that was the coolest experiment I've ever done. You do it, and then you get $220. Hooray! After that, you go do the survey you were asked to do at the beginning of the experiment. One of the questions was, how fun was the experiment on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is really fun and 1 is not fun at all. You rate it as 3 and leave. Why would you lie to the experimenter? It wasn't that fun really, and you don't feel bad about lying to the participant. You were paid $220. You're about to leave and the experimenter stops you. Wait a minute, they say. They take you into a room and explain that the whole thing was the experiment. The lying to the participant was part of the experiment. The $220 was part of the experiment. Rating the experiment was part of the experiment. Everything. You now have to give back the money. The thing is, you thought you were getting $220 when you rated the experiment. Other people also took part in the experiment. They were told that they would only get $10. The experimenter was really only interested in how much people said they liked the experiment before they knew the whole thing was a sham. This story is based on a famous social psychology experiment conducted in the 1950s. Instead of $220 or $10, participants thought they were getting $20 or $1. $220 and $10 are the equivalent in 2023, accounting for inflation. What were the results though? The main outcome variable was how they rated the experiment at the end, after they had lied to the person they thought was next in line to take it. Well, people who received $20 said the experiment was not that fun. On a scale of -5 to 5, the average was about -0.05. So like 5 out of 10. People who received $1 though, well, they had a much better time. They rated it as a plus 1.35 on the -5 to 5 scale, or about a 6 or 7 out of 10. Interestingly, people who weren't given any money and weren't asked to lie about it gave it a -0.45 rating, or about 4 out of 10. Okay, so take a step back for a second. People who were given $1 rate the experiment as being more fun than people who got $20. Why? Well, think about it. They were paid to lie to someone they thought was the next participant in line. If you're given $1 to lie, that's not very satisfying. Or maybe it is. Maybe you are a liar. You love to lie, or liar, liar, pants on fire. Excuse me. Sorry. The thing is, you don't want to be a natural liar. $1 isn't very much to sell your soul to the devil. Deep down, you know the $1 isn't worth your soul. So instead of thinking that you've sold it for pocket change, you make excuses. Well, maybe I did think it was fun. I wasn't really lying to the participant. Whew, off the hook. You can't get me now, Satan. But $20? Now that's worth lying about. You said it yourself, remember? $220 $220? You could use it to help buy a new telescope. You're in. So you basically go into the waiting room and strike up a conversation with the next participant. You're supposed to say, that was the coolest experiment I've ever done. You do it, and then you get $220. Hooray. After that, you go do the survey you were asked to do at the beginning of the experiment. One of the questions was, how fun was the experiment on a scale of 1 to 10? Where 10 is really fun and 1 is not fun at all. You rated as 3 and leave. Why would you lie to the experimenter? It wasn't that fun really, and you don't feel bad about lying to the participant. You were paid $220. Sounds like the devil is very happy with you, my friend. But what does any of this have to do with unpaid reviews? Put yourself in the shoes of a small to medium-sized YouTuber for a sec. I'll be the guinea pig. I have right now around 1,900 subscribers. I get around 1,000 views per video. For every 1,000 views of a 10-minute video, I get about $3. I will probably get $3 for this video. I spend a lot of time making them, so I make like half a cent an hour. Nice. I will certainly be rich soon. Also, you should subscribe if you haven't yet. Thanks. But what happens when a YouTuber gets asked to do a review for free? Well, they also put a lot of time into testing the product, recording themselves, editing the videos, promoting their videos, etc. I would say that these types of videos probably get 20,000 views on average just looking at other astro YouTubers' content. They probably get around $5 to $10 per 1,000 views. So in total, they might make something like $200 on average, gross. Given the effort they put in, they're not making much money per hour. You should consider joining your favorite YouTuber's channel, by the way. It helps them more than the advertising revenue. Anyway, what's the point? Well, the small or medium-sized YouTuber is like the participant that gets $1. When they agreed to do the review with the company probably said implicitly or explicitly that the product they're sending is really good. By accepting to do the review in the first place, the YouTuber is also agreeing with that sentiment, even if subconsciously. For example, I would get an email like this and think to myself, they wouldn't send me a bad product. Sure, I'll do the review. And what happens if the product is not that great? Put yourself in the shoes of the YouTuber. After spending hours testing it, after you've implicitly told the company that you probably think the product is good, after the company has given you a new idea for a video and making you feel like your channel is worthy of their product, what happens? Did you waste your time and mislead the company that reached out to you? No. The product might actually be good. It might be actually okay. It's probably better than I think. So let's make the link between unpaid reviews and the experiment more clear. Basically, your private beliefs are more likely to change when you've made a large investment and have not been coerced much to make a public statement that contradicts your private belief. It can be seen in this formula. In the experiment, the private belief that the experiment is boring, coupled with the large investment of doing the experiment and low compensation for lying, led participants to change their private beliefs. They justified their lying. In unpaid reviews, one possible private belief is that the product being reviewed isn't that great. There is a large investment working on the video, but little compensation for agreeing to do the video. Agreeing to do the video implicitly tells the company that the YouTuber agrees with their assessment of the product. These things might, and the key word is might, lead the YouTuber to change their private belief. Note that the change in belief has nothing to do with the actual quality of the product. These are the social pressures and ethical issues that unpaid reviews create. Okay, so the first two pitfalls don't necessarily happen consciously or maliciously, but this third one unfortunately is malicious. Remember this part of the video? For example, I would get an email like this and think to myself, they wouldn't send me a bad product. Stop, right there. Repeat that. They wouldn't send me a bad product. Again, they wouldn't send me a bad product. With that in mind, let's do some pretending. It's the marketing team at Awesome Telescope Company. Jane and John are coming up with a plan to market it. Hey, John says, we have to market our new doublet soon. Great, Jane replies. I think we could send it to Best Astrophotography. He is great. People trust him. Awesome idea. That will save us a ton in production costs. I mean, we won't have to produce a video at all. Okay, get the prototype and send it to him. It's got great glass in it. Hardly any distortions. We've had the team check it. Will do. How likely do you think this scenario is? I agree, it's not very likely. I don't think a company would deliberately send a prototype that is better than the real product, usually. But let's go into a different universe and see what Jane and John say. Hey, John says, we have to market our new doublet soon. Great, Jane replies. I think we should send it to Best Astrophotography. He's great. People trust him. Awesome idea. That will save us a ton in production costs. I mean, we won't have to produce a video at all. Okay, go find that bad telescope that just came in. It had a ton of distortions in the glass, but if we lose it, it won't matter. Will do. I think that comparing these two scenarios, the first is much more likely than the second. Companies don't send reviewers bad examples of their products. If anything, they'll test the product to make sure it is up to spec. But sometimes, it can get bad. Let's look at an example from AData, which is not a telescope company. They're a tech company, and they sell NVMe SSD drives. They sent reviewers samples of their drives, the SX8200. Reviews were overwhelmingly positive. They could copy files quickly and efficiently. A few months later, they switched some of the components to lower their cost. But they didn't tell anyone. They did not change the model name, but the speed of the drives decreased dramatically. People noticed. It created a controversy. Look it up, it's interesting. And it shows that at the end of the day, a company's goal is to make money, and this can lead to unethical decision making sometimes. Now, don't get me wrong, I think most companies are good and aren't actively deceiving their customers, but it's something to keep in mind. So what can we do about unpaid reviews? Well, I have a couple solutions. The first solution for myself in this channel is that if I ever am fortunate to be asked to do an unpaid review, I will refer to this video at the beginning of the review video. I will tell the company this up front. I think unpaid reviews are mostly useful, but we have to be aware of their potential pitfalls and ethical issues. For everyone, I propose a couple solutions. The first, treat unpaid reviews as sponsored reviews. They might not be exactly the same, and some other YouTubers might disagree, but I think this is a good rule of thumb. People, myself included, are not always aware of the social pressures that influence their decisions. This is especially true of unpaid reviews. 2, don't just rely on unpaid reviews. Also look up blog posts, cloudy night posts, Facebook pages, astronomy club members' experiences, etc. Find information from multiple sources, including YouTuber-funded reviews where they were not asked by a company to do a review. And 3, slow down before you buy anything. Make a checklist of what you want in a product. What aperture do you want? Focal length? Also include in the checklist 2 positive reviews from 2 different sources and 2 negative reviews from 2 other sources. Find a similar product from a different company and do the same thing. In other words, do your homework. Don't impulse buy based off a single review, unpaid or otherwise. Thanks for watching.